with West Yorkshire Neurodiversity Programme. We have these talks once a month. They're open to anybody that wants to come. It started kind of as a bit of sharing professional practice, and then we just opened it up to anyone with any kind of interest in neurodiversity, including people with lived experience, people working in the field, anyone. We do record these talks, and we stop recording after the speaker has finished talking. The reason we don't record the whole thing is because quite often a lot of personal information might come out, or sensitive information, while people do the Q&A element of it. And we want to kind of protect people's anonymity. So please don't share anything with people that comes in the second part of the discussion today. It's just for the people that are here, but feel free to kind of share the information that's given in the first part that Owen's talking about. Usually we kind of wait for the second part for questions, but there will be people like myself with ADHD here that might just jump in and have to ask a question. That's fine. Or you can put them in the chat and I'll try and pick it up with Owen, who won't be able to see you. So I'll flag it with him. I think that's about it. Yeah. So Owen, go ahead.
Cool. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about Autism AIM's hubs, or Autism AIM really, and how we empower autistic adults. So kind of going through how we started, why they work, and what they do in simple terms. So I am Owen Walker, and I am the AIM service manager, and AIM has principles basically that kind of underpin everything that AIM does. So there's quite a few principles and quite a few aims. So this is a very kind of talky slide to start off with, but yeah, really kind of looking to value the different skills and potential of autistic people. So it's worth mentioning that kind of 90% of the team are autistic themselves, but obviously there are different ways that we look to kind of like unlock people's potential, including clients. So yeah, I'll go into it in more detail, but kind of like to be led by autistic adults. People often say we're co-led because I'm the manager and I'm one of the few non-autistic people in the team. But yeah, and when we're developing the service, or when we've developed the service, we've involved autistic people at every stage. We also kind of like, one of our fundamental things we do is to increase awareness and acceptance of the needs of autistic people. It's worth mentioning autistic adults. We're a service for people who are over 18. We were kind of an advocacy organisation, which again I'll go into a bit more, but we are looking to ensure that autistic people are involved in kind of local service planning, and that people's opinions are heard. We're trying to like provide and promote equality of access, kind of regardless of people's communication needs or kind of other intersectional things, and try and empower people with information and support to make their own choices. So we won't always work with people directly. Sometimes we'll just provide people with information and support. So I think we had over 15,000 people visit our Leeds website last year. And one of the kind of real strengths of AIM is around innovation. As lots of people will know here, neurodivergent people are great at thinking outside the box and having quite a kind of, applying critical analysis to things, so that, we can do things in the best way that suit the people that we work with, but keep up with kind of new technologies or new ways of working and that kind of thing, to make sure that we're using our resources in the best way possible, and we work with integrity and honesty. So our aims are to provide information in a range of formats, so we can do that kind of like in various ways, so one-to-one, remotely, drop-in hubs, on the website, etc. Another fundamental thing about AIM is to help autistic adults who have little or no funded support. So we know that the majority of autistic people don't have any funded support through the local authorities or adult social care. So we were kind of set up and designed for those people who aren't getting that support. You could term it as it's for people who don't have high support needs. That's a bit contentious because support needs fluctuate and differ from different people at different times in different ways. And we kind of trying to promote self-advocacy really. So like not being a service that people become dependent on. We're an as and when service, but if we can kind of like work with someone and never see them again, that's for positive reasons because they've learned to self-advocate, then that's what we're really aiming for in the majority of cases. We always try and reduce barriers. So like I say, we advocate a lot in terms of kind of like talking to different organisations and different forums and that kind of thing to reduce the barriers. So again, we're not necessarily needed, trying to eventually make ourselves obsolete in that respect in terms of like if there weren't barriers, then we wouldn't be needed in most of the cases. Reducing isolation and kind of like people participating. So again, like kind of promoting things like this, you know, so that people can participate in the co-production group and loads of other things, so that we're again not the only voice in town. People are getting their voices heard in different ways, and continued partnership working. Again, I'll go into more detail, but like, yeah, a lot of what we do is kind of working in partnership formally and informally with different organizations, and trying to increase those other organizations' awareness and acceptance. I've covered the innovation, but equally, you know, trying to influence other organisations to innovate and change what they do and use our learning to apply to their own services. And yeah, I've covered the local service planning thing pretty well, but I suppose that's expanded slightly in recent years to kind of outside of Leeds, outside of Bradford, across West Yorkshire, bits of Yorkshire. Sometimes we have conversations nationally with different organisations as well. So yeah, it's also really important to mention that we are part of the Advocate group and that everything we do is advocacy based. So that does really determine kind of the projects that we do, the kind of people, the way we work with people, and yeah, essentially, kind of there's an advocacy charter which does summarize a lot of kind of what AIM's about, why we do certain things. So the advocacy charter kind of covers lots of different things, but essentially, like, you know, having that clarity of purpose really helps us when we're deciding what we do. Quite often people will say, can you set up social groups? And that's not really what we're there for. Like a peer support group that might have a social focus might be a thing that we would do. You know, if it means that people are sharing information or that kind of thing. So it's really important that we have that clarity of purpose. Again, really important that we remain independent. We do work in partnership with lots of organisations. I suppose, like, you know, kind of most closely with the local diagnostic service in Leeds, and we've always kind of stuck to maintaining our independence. And actually, by doing that, we can say to that service, you know, these are the things that people are saying to us, and present kind of challenge, but also kind of a constructive challenge. So this is the issue that people are facing. This is how they might say to us how things should be changed, how we might use the expertise in our team to kind of recommend changes. Yeah, confidentiality. I'm sure everyone here knows what confidentiality is. Person-led, I've kind of covered, and I'll go into more. Empowerment, I've covered as well. Quality and diversity, everyone I'm sure has done that training to be able to be accountable. So when people might challenge us and kind of say, why why are you not doing this, or why are you doing things in a certain way, to always be accountable to that and to explain to them why we can do some things and why we can't do things. And like I say, be accountable for our actions. Always looking at accessibility, how to change our service. I know in recent years, members of our team have really looked more and more at this accessibility, and using technology mostly to kind of, provide things like kind of reminders, or lay things out in a certain way so people don't get confused and can process things more easily and get more out of their appointments with us. And always don't get many complaints, thankfully, and get far more kind of positive feedback than we do get complaints. But obviously, complaints are important because, again, like, we don't always do things right. We are always open to that challenge, and it's important in kind of like learning from those things when we don't get things right. So another kind of like fundamental thing that isn't always adopted by autism services is around kind of like the social model versus a medical model. I know probably most people here will know what the medical model is versus the social model. It's important to say that in some contexts, the medical model can be appropriate. It's not. Some people have medical needs, and they're addressed through the medical model, or a hybrid of medical and social model. We want to be able to say, like, have you looked at this in a kind of social model type way to services? Obviously, like, kind of NHS services have done that a lot more, but there's still a lot more way to go. But we're not looking to kind of be fixed people, to try and fix people to fit in with society. We're looking at how society needs to change so that autistic people can fit in or flourish, or kind of live fulfilling lives, really. So again, this isn't an autism specific example of the medical versus the social model, but it is usually the way that this is explained in the clearest way. So kind of, someone can't go into a building because they can't go upstairs. But if the building had a ramp, then they could do that. So it's, the kind of argument that society is really disabling, and so challenging that, and trying to come up with solutions wherever possible. And I know it's been looked at by Rhiannon recently in the co-production group around an identity first language, and it's been talked a lot about within the deep dive or the neurodiversity review, around like the language that's used for autistic people. Now, we do have a guide on our website about this. Like, some people's preference isn't to use identity first language, but actually, like, what we know is that if somebody sees kind of the wrong language being used within a service or by professionals, that really does make them think that this service doesn't understand them, doesn't really kind of want to take on board their views and that kind of thing. And obviously, language is hard to change in your own mind. If you've been using the same language for years, it's hard to rewire your brain to use the right language. But it is really important, and I think there's a place for parent carer organisations. Those people need support. There's a need for services to kind of lead on things or to start new projects, but it can really highlight that there's a potential there that they're not listening to autistic people when designing their services. So it is really important to consider that most people who feel passionate, about this thing, prefer identity first language. So yeah, kind of brief history of AIM. We're coming up this August or September to 10 years of AIM. and I'm not sure if she's here today. I can't see the list, but like Wendy Cook, who is the SEO for Neurodiversity Review, I think that's the right way of putting it, started the project in 2014, and really there was a something called citizen advocacy, which is something we still do within AdvoNet, but it was seen as kind of like a watching brief, a kind of thing where a volunteer would work with somebody who didn't have anyone else in their lives that could advocate for them or with them, and but it's a watching brief. It's something that's kind of ongoing over lots of years, and if something comes up, then they'll help address that thing. But actually, what was really needed was something kind of a bit more clear and a bit more kind of outcome focused. And if people came to us with like a list, people usually have a list of things that they're struggling with or what they want to achieve. We really looked at it and thought, well, actually, we need something a bit different here. The citizen advocacy project was possibly more, or was definitely more around kind of people with learning disabilities, and there may be autistic as well. But this was looking at, there's a huge gap there, like I said earlier, for a service that just works with autistic adults who don't have a learning disability diagnosis, don't have that high kind of level of support package and that kind of thing. So it's really forming the project with people, with autistic people themselves, and with their carers, to form a steering group to look at kind of how we address these things. And in 2015, we launched the kind of mentoring, so different to the citizen advocacy, more kind of focused in the citizen advocacy, and then there was also a kind of a website which had information on it that we ran for a couple of years, and then in 2016 we launched our first kind of in-person hubs, and alongside that we had like an advocate within the team, and then we offered one-to-one peer support. In 2017, which is when I joined the organisation, we got funding from the lottery. It's fair to say that those first 3 or 4 years we weren't operating on a lot of money. Credit to Wendy for doing 80 hours a week and getting paid for 20 of them. But definitely, kind of we were able to expand the team a little bit, and expand the mentoring and have more frequent hub appointments and open it twice a week and have a drop in and booked appointments and that kind of thing. In 2018, we launched our post-diagnostic support offer.
Owen, you've accidentally gone on mute, I think. You're only 10 seconds in.
I've got that mute. Can you hear me now? Why does that keep happening?
Yeah,
It's
I can
so
hear you now.
strange. Like, yeah, I didn't press anything. Anyway, can you see that?
Yeah, could you make it big? Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
good.
Thank you.
Which year was I in? 2018.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, in 2018 we launched our post-diagnostic support offer, and yeah, kind of some more peer support groups. So I'll go into a bit more about what the post-diagnostic support offer was, but it was kind of one of the first non-diagnostic service post-diagnostic support offers in the country, and obviously we've learned a lot since the start of that. In 2019, I mean, we sometimes kind of think we need to pause a bit and kind of embed things, but we definitely kind of expanded our peer support groups to include more groups and have a kind of general peer support group. 2020, everybody's favourite year, was when the pandemic hit, and that obviously totally changed how we did, well, how we worked really. But I think the fact that we had such a strong team with kind of autistic people in the team meant that we could react to it really strongly. You know, that the issues that they were facing were similar to the issues that lots of autistic people were facing. And so we launched a kind of COVID toolkit within, I think, a kind of couple of months of the pandemic hitting, and expanded on that. And a lot of that was kind of used nationally. But it made us think, well, could we be doing more toolkits? Could we be doing more resources and that kind of thing? And we also did a Keeping Neurodivergent People Connected project, where we were kind of, a lot of people closed off. It was a lot to deal with, but still had a need, and that need might have drastically changed because of the pandemic. So it's important to be able to get in touch with people that we already knew, or people that may have never used our service before, to kind of check in and say, you know, like, what do you need? And again, the toolkit was really kind of important in that. And I think it's fair to say we kind of came out of the pandemic, although 2021 isn't coming out of the pandemic like a bit stronger, but we knew pre-pandemic that people's physical health issues, their ability to access their GP was a really important thing. But obviously the pandemic was, you know, and we're still seeing it today, like, had a massive influence on people's physical health, and as well as their mental health. But, you know, kind of being able to access services, health services, was a lot harder. So it's really good to have that health access project funded then. Both kind of like the worst time to launch it and the best time, because it was really hard, because obviously health services were struggling quite a lot, but equally kind of the most important for reasons I've already said. And we also received funding to launch a mental health equity project, and we launched an online peer support hub in early 2021. Because we tried various things, and it was found that Discord was kind of the best place to be doing that. So, that's where I've done things. Yeah, I haven't edited 2025. So yeah, again, like I talked about earlier, you know, we were looking at what kind of strategy guides, what kind of toolkits and information guidelines there we could expand on. We found that, you know, like, sometimes people were coming to us for information, or they were struggling with certain things to do with their autistic traits, and actually, like, you know, they wanted that information in written form after they talked to us, but we needed to look at collating those things we'd always said to people, putting them in clear, accessible formats, and that meant that people didn't necessarily need to come to us. It's fair to say as well, from 2019 to this year, in Leeds, the number of people we worked with kind of quadrupled. So we had to really look at efficiencies and kind of like how we could avoid like unnecessary appointments, or people could use our service in an indirect way. Yeah. Last year we launched Bradford and Craven Autism AIM, which is a new thing for us. You know, we knew Bradford relatively well, but it is a different picture really, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But that's really positive that actually we could launch Bradford and Craven Autism AIM and move into a different area. Now, a lot of the feedback that's gathered, so people say, well, we need something like Leeds Autism AIM in our area, and so it's been really positive to launch Bradford and Craven Autism AIM. This year we've unfortunately lost our health access project funding, but we are fortunate to gain some funding for a mental health access project. Again, I'll go through the differences there. We also saw that, you know, we were getting fewer volunteers just generally for our mentoring and that kind of thing. And people were coming and they to volunteer, increasingly people who are autistic, and for various other reasons we launched a kind of volunteer peer support, and we're also launching some kind of webinar series. Again, our post-diagnostic service is kind of like got 4 times as many people referring to it as we're funded to see. So we're looking at that webinar series as a kind of way of addressing that need. And 2025, that is, I've clearly used a template here, but I'm just going to go with it. Like next year, we're going to do a formation of a strategic alliance, expanding market presence and capabilities, because that could be applicable. So yeah, I'm sure everyone here knows like what the challenges people face are, but obviously this is a kind of a way that we respond to what we're seeing. So again, like in Leeds, we worked with about kind of 900 autistic people and then 300 professionals and parent carers. But like, you know, we by working with so many people, we get a pretty good view about what's not working so well. And that is a big part of how we design our service. I think the fact that we've got 2 mental health projects kind of exemplifies again the mental health impact that was from the pandemic, but also that you know, the high prevalence of mental health issues amongst autistic people existed before the pandemic. So that's where we've kind of tried to get more funding and resource to look at mental health. We all know about the issues with access to diagnosis as well. So the inconsistency with diagnostic services across the regions and the long waiting times. And yeah, what I guess like what happens post-diagnostic diagnosis as well. What do people get once they've got a diagnosis? Often we are the answer to that question. Not completely the answer. Obviously, we try and increase access to other services and that kind of thing, but often the first protocol for somebody once they've got a diagnosis. We know that employment's a massive issue. We know that education's a massive issue. Social isolation's a big issue for people. Our hubs, our drop-in hubs, are kind of a social place for people to meet and meet other people that they might have stuff in common with. The peer support groups as well provide a social outlet, but fundamentally they are there for kind of people to share information and strategies and that kind of thing. Housing, again, I'll cover it now, but we've, for example, trained up some autism champions within Engaged Leeds, which is a kind of housing service for people who need a bit more support to sort out their housing needs. But like, that's an example. Health services. So again, like, you know, I know a lot of positive work's been done and being done around kind of healthcare stuff, but there's still big gaps there. And like the solution to a lot of things, or part of the solution to a lot of things, is training. I won't go down that slight rabbit hole. But yeah, all support services really, you know, kind of, we don't want to be a bubble. We don't want to be the place that everybody comes to get everything sorted. You know, there are services that should be accessible to everyone. You know, and there's challenges, you know, not those change quite a lot. Some projects finish, like people leave who might have had a kind of particular kind of passion about autism and improving services. You know, we try and keep our finger on the pulse of kind of how services are working for people, but just navigating the system of what support is available is actually quite difficult. I know it's been said, well, can't you just put all the information on your website and that will do? But actually what people need is to talk through that, to maybe like help reassure them that Again, they might have used a service in the past and we've done a bit of work with them and we say, well, there should be some improvement there, like they've had training or you know, or you can use this self-advocacy resource this time and that might change things. Or, okay, there's 5 different employment support services that should be able to meet your needs, but actually like understanding which one is you should go for is quite difficult. So giving people an informed choice rather than kind of advice per se. So not necessarily saying you should go here because this is the best one, is saying this is what other people have said about this service. This is what we know about their accessibility. So yeah, loads of people are involved in kind of how AIM functions, what it does, what direction we're going. So I mentioned earlier, we've got a steering group that is entirely made up of autistic adults now. We used to have a few parent carers in there. We've got actually autistic parent carers in that group as well. We respond a lot to client feedback in terms of considering what we do. We use the team expertise. It's always kind of like a thing that is maybe obviously experts by experience are really kind of useful and part of improving things definitely. But most people, not all people in our team have kind of like a special interest in autism and aren't just there as autistic people, representing their own views. They're there to kind of learn about autism and to develop things and to think about autism on a wider scale. Obviously, we listen to partner organisations that kind of involves funders as well. We do have to respond to what funding is available, what the priorities of those funders are, and that kind of thing. And then we are part of a bigger organisation, so we, kind of the direction that Advanet goes in, what the trustees want us to do as an organisation, influences how AIM operates. So I mentioned partnerships. I probably missed off a couple here, but like you can see here that we work a lot in partnership with different organisations. So kind of on the right, kind of local authority, NHS services, third sector organisations, and and West Yorkshire Police. So yeah, we try and have lots of meetings and have getting lots of forums and that kind of thing to make sure that people's voices are being heard. We have 4 main funders. So Live Well Leeds, we provide a bit of consultancy and training for them. The ICB provide a lot of our funding. We get funding from the National Community Fund and Comic Relief. So here's some client feedback, so that maybe gives you a bit more of a context of how we might help people. So somebody said the last Zoom appointment was one of the most positive experiences I've had in my life. To be able to talk openly and freely and being genuinely listened to without the put downs and funny looks, etc., that I've had for 40 years is the sort of thing that really encourages me to speak more. The person said the drop-in social is life-saving, relaxing with autistic peers and sharing each other's life experiences and insights has a far greater benefit than attending therapy with a professional and no comprehension of autistic burnout and trauma. It's not to invalidate therapy, but we've had similar feedback from quite a lot of people, that kind of peer support in itself can have a really positive impact on their mental health. So another person said, post-diagnostic support helped me talk about emotions and negative experiences of conventional therapy, CBT therapy. I was informed about the options to access autism-specific counselling and ended up with an autism-specific counsellor, which had a positive impact on my well-being. Again, mental health services particularly difficult to navigate, so letting people know what their options are is really important. And like I said, unfortunately no longer running, but the health advocacy service changed my life. I now have support I didn't have before for multiple conditions, and I feel that the staff at the GP listen to me more even when I come on my own. So again, that kind of self-advocacy, empowerment thing. The help I've had with PIP was also very helpful. I've never been able to even complete the forms and confront those forms. So yeah, the kind of we have 4 project areas really within AIM. So I've talked quite a lot about Leeds Autism AIM, but in summary, kind of like we have the Autism Hub, post-diagnostic support, information signposting, one-to-one peer support, volunteer mentoring and peer support groups, co-design group, and self-advocacy. Bradford and Craven Autism AIM, we kind of launched last year and really kind of used the lessons learned in Leeds and applied them in a different context and location. There are lots of things that are different that we've learned over the past year, that we're applying that learning to making slight changes and differences to how we operate in Leeds. Have I gone on mute again? Something just popped up. No. Okay. So yeah, we've trained social prescribers, conducted sensory audits of acute mental health wards, which we won a partnership award last year. We're going to start running regular mental health focused peer support groups. We're lucky to be able to continue the health access project in Bradford. We're offering kind of very limited pre-diagnosis and slightly less limited post-diagnostic support in Bradford. We've got information signposting and resources, and we've got a mental health equity project, so that's funded by Comic Relief. So again, part of that is kind of like training social prescribers, advocates, and third sector mental health services, conducting sensory audits. So using some of the learning from the sensory audits of the acute mental health wards, but looking at kind of organisations who might provide support for like more low-level mental health issues. Mention the mental health peer support group in Leeds. That's kind of funded, and in Bradford, sorry, but that is funded by Comic Relief, and we work in partnership with Mind. So we've got online and in person in Leeds, and online in Bradford launching next month. And we do a lot of resources. So we started putting out some of our resources around kind of mental health and autism that we've co-produced. And it's in its mobilization phase at the moment, but in a similar way, kind of like, told you, Rhiannon, I would have messed up these slides in some ways that I didn't realize. But what actually the mental health access project is doing is more kind of one-to-one stuff. So there's some new mental health hubs in Leeds, and we're trying to help people kind of assessment to help with kind of people being able to get their voices heard and being able to explain what their mental health issues are, maybe going to that assessment with them as advocates, and then around that looking at, like, you know, someone might get some self-help resources and we can help go through that in a kind of peer support way. And also, again, similar to the mental health equity project, but within those new mental health hubs, doing sensory audits and doing training. So yeah, in conclusion, we know that our model works. We know that we're effective in addressing the challenges faced by autistic adults. Sometimes we can be limited in what we can do. We would like to provide more support, but obviously limited by funding and resources and that kind of thing. But yeah, we know that our support is targeted, hopefully in the areas with the most need, or where you know, there's the least services on offer. So yeah, like involving the community and involving people is really key, and continuing to do that, and that will improve people's quality of life. We know that we've made huge impact, you know, just working with one person, and kind of like a significant impact is unquantifiable. You know, it's hard to quantify everything we do for people. Like I said, in Leeds, it was around 900 people last year. Like, but the benefit to those people is huge. You know, and done on a fairly relatively small amount of money per person. But yeah, we know we have a real impact, and we know that, you know, it's not just about that one-to-one work. You know, it's the work we do advocating on a wider scale, you know, and always looking at new ways of collaborating. So thanks everyone for listening to me for 42 minutes. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Owen.
Anyways,
Nadine straight in with one.
cool.
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you, Owen. I was just going to ask, it sounds like you're doing fantastic, amazing things. And I know that obviously we've met on this forum and things before as well, but I just wondered any plans to expand out over into